right, welcome everyone to Maker's Mashup First Tech Talk. So we're going to be doing these on a weekly basis, or an every other week basis, I should say. And we're going to kind of see how that goes. And if we get a lot of people very interested in this, we'll do it more often. But every other week's when we're going to be doing this. And this stream is going to be your opportunity to ask questions of the Makers Mashup team, and we've got pretty much everybody that's on the team here today. Got myself, Rob Meck.
My name is Nick Hutter.
And then we also have Jesse.
Yep, Jesse Robinson.
And we're all makers that we've gotten together here, and basically everybody here kind of supports the channel in a big way. And we've been putting together a lot of different content that everybody seems to have really taken a shine to. And our Discord channel, which everyone has really been a great part of. A lot of people have joined our Discord channel, asked a lot of really great questions, and that's really been the inspiration for putting together this sort of show, so that way you have the opportunity to ask some questions and to get some answers for some of the projects that you may be working on. Could be something related to something off the channel, or it could be something where you just need a little bit of a helping hand. So that's what the show's all about. I'll start by talking a little bit about my experience. Again, Rob Mack, my experience is really been in a lot of software and electronics over the years. I've worked as a software developer and a software engineer for many years, and now work as a project manager. But I've always kept up with a lot of my different maker skills, those being working with electronics, working with 3D printing. I've gotten into CNC, done a lot with that, lasers. So a lot of varied experience, especially in other areas, like done some work, a lot of woodworking. So it's been a long time that I've gathered a lot of knowledge, and that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing it with the channel here.
Oh, similar background to me. A little more on the embedded side. So I've done a lot of embedded programming. I currently do web development, as it were. And then I work with the robotics team as well. So we do robotic stuff. So I'll build robot, we program it, all electrical, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my side hobby, in addition to doing 3D printing and electronics work on the side as well.
Yeah, and I typically, for my day job, I design circuit boards for small electronics, and I write firmware in C. At home, I do electronic stuff, a lot of things with lights and microprocessors. I have a couple 3D printers, and I have a Chinese laser cutter, so I do a lot of laser projects and art for that.
Awesome. So what we're going to do for each one of these shows is, if you look in the description, you'll see down there a form that you can fill out to submit your questions. We'll try to answer the ones that are in the spreadsheet first. So if you submit that form, we'll answer your questions. Otherwise, we can always look to the chat as well. But the spreadsheet helps us kind of pick the questions that we think we can be the most help with. So I saw we had a couple of questions out here, and Jesse, you and I were kind of talking about this one earlier. So one of the viewers wrote in, can you create a tutorial on how to reuse lithium batteries from broken devices? And I think this is probably a really great video to put together. So I'm definitely interested in that. But just for my own knowledge, because most of the batteries I will pull out of things are going to be more your traditional, like 3.4 volt or 7 volt lithium batteries out of, say, a charger. With your experience, have you pulled stuff out of cell phones and things like that and used those batteries?
I haven't reused any cell phone batteries. It's a lot of them are like inside of like a pack, and they have a lot of extra connections for different like communication and like protection circuitry. In terms of pulling useful batteries from things. In terms of like laptops and stuff, a lot of those battery packs are reusable. They usually contain those. I think they're 18650 is the cell size, and you can find lots of stuff to do with those.
Oh, that's super cool. So you think cell phone batteries probably not the best to try to reuse because there's a lot of embedded circuitry in the batteries themselves?
Yeah, you'd have to open them up and look at it and see if you just got like the typical two wires coming out off the battery, then you could use that. You might get a couple out. Sometimes when you have protection circuitry, you'll just have I'm trying, maybe like a three wire. They'll have like a battery power ground, and then they'll have like kind of a protected one as well. Um, you really want those protection circuitries when you're dealing with the lithium batteries, and you can buy separate circuits just for that a lot of times. They protect against over voltage, under voltage, over current draw, things like that. And another interesting thing to note, if you have a device where the battery doesn't charge anymore, a lot of times there's like an under voltage lockout that they'll not charge if the battery is too low because they think it's dead or just no good. You can hook up to a power supply controlled, make sure you're limiting your current and watching the battery. And if you get it above that hump, sometimes then the device will charge on its own again.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. I know there was some protection circuits, but I didn't know that they would identify that it's so under voltage it basically thinks it's permanently dead.
Mhm.
So that's definitely interesting.
Yeah, if you ever plan to use your device again, yeah, keep it charged to some extent. If it dies, it's fine. But yeah, if you leave it sit in a drawer for a month, you might be in trouble if you go to use it again.
Mhm.
Yeah, the big thing with lithium is just like you said, being very careful about charging and things of that nature, and how much you discharge. Because if they don't have as much protection circuitry built in, you definitely start on fire and go pretty quick.
Yes.
So
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have a
watch your temperatures.
once they get damaged and they get an internal short, they go until they don't have energy left. It's just like it does its thing and you can't do much about it.
And that's another thing that I was curious about because I've always seen videos in that show lithium batteries. One that gets punctured, it turns into a large fire. And realistically, I was considering this. So this quite seriously in the sense that I do salvage some of the batteries from older items. But the question that I have is are the fumes toxic coming out of those? And if they are like lithium batteries something that I should be concerned about using maybe in the garage versus in the indoor shop? Because if something did go wrong, I mean, I could certainly, I've got a fire extinguisher, but that's a chemical fire. So that would be probably not as effective. But the question becomes, would something like a metal trash can work where we just go ahead and put a trash can, shove it in the trash can, take it outside? But I'm more worried about the fumes because you don't want that inside your house getting, fumes everywhere, especially if they're toxic.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that how toxic they are. The fire is usually my biggest worry when it comes to that.
Yeah.
A lot of times, when you look into like RC car charging and stuff, you can actually buy like fireproof bags that you can charge your batteries in. So that's sometimes a good idea when you're dealing with a dangerous battery or one you're worried about.
Yeah, in a previous life, I worked for a company, and one of the products they sold was battery dischargers. And so the idea was like battery testers and stuff. So they could do cycles as well. So you could hook up a charger as well if you had a computer controlled charger. So you could cycle it on and off, and they'd run tests forever. And a lot of times they'd put them in the bags in case it just happened to start on fire. So we would do some serious discharge. I mean, these were pretty big batteries sometimes. So.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yep.
So I want to say hi to everyone joining our stream here. A couple of shout outs. I see Joey out there. How are you doing, Gandalf? And also see Boss Hog out there. Both of those people hang out in our Discord channel. And if you're not in our Discord channel, our Discord works like a makerspace. We've got a whole bunch of people with a lot of really good experience in there. So if you have questions on projects along with the show, you can actually go in there and ask different questions. So it's a great place to learn about different things if you need help with your maker projects. So let's go ahead and take a look at another question we had in here and see if there's one that we can talk about. So let's switch over to 3D printing. We had a question in here from Robert from San Diego asking about extra buttons and devices to Octoprint. So interesting enough, I have a video out there on how to do just that sort of thing. I've got one of my videos on how to expand an SKR. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can do that and expand and add buttons to your 3D printer that don't natively exist, and you can make a hardware button as well. The way that I did it in the video is that I used another embedded type device. And I used an ESP8266. And the way that I did that was I communicate with the SKR over the serial port. So the nice thing about communicating with the SKR over the serial port is that I can send all sorts of commands just like I would through regular Marlin, through, let's say, Pronterface or through the terminal window. So the easiest way, short of either writing your own code inside Marlin and making some sort of hardware adjustment to the SKR, the easiest way, in my opinion, is to use that serial interface. Now, the SKR 1.4 that just came out also has a new I2C interface to it, so that's another way that you might be able to look at expanding it. But if you watch that SKR video, it is pretty helpful for finding out how to take just an ESP8266. You can use an Arduino as well. And then all that you do is hook up the serial lines to it. And then once you've got those serial lines connected, you just write code that sends the Marlin command to the SKR board directly through there. So you could just press a button and tell it to home your printer, or press a button and it would preheat, or do any sort of G code that you wanted. You could even go as far as putting, I know there's G code out there for doing bed leveling that will go to different points on your bed and allow you to adjust it. You could execute all those commands through there as well. So it's really, really a flexible way to do that. And it's a pretty simple way. And the video is already out there. So it's really helpful.
Thinking, a lot of that you could do it through Octoprint as well if you wanted. It's just different, talking to Octoprint versus talking to sending the G code and things like you were saying. Yeah, I think, adding the buttons, it's probably going to involve a little bit of programming no matter what you do, to some extent. But maybe probably a plugin for Octoprint to do it.
Yeah, one of the other things that that Robert was also asking was how to set up Octoprint with if this then that, which I did notice that they do have a plugin for that. So I'm curious. I'm curious what Robert wanted to do with it in particular, because there are some triggers that are already in there available in that plugin, but it would be more of maybe having Google or something else be an automated thing to go ahead and preheat your printer. And that's actually pretty easy to do if you wanted to write code for Octoprint. Then you could just go ahead and take something like an Arduino and just connect it up to the network. And then from there, you could just use the MQTT queues to go ahead and tell Google or whatever to basically do this, and then that would pick up the message and put it through that message queue onto the Octoprint. So
yeah, because I've been kind of looking a bit at the voice stuff, and I know with like the Echo stuff, like the Amazon ones, you have to like pay to host your what do they call it? Your
skills.
Oh, your little service.
Yeah, what do they call that?
I don't know, but it's in the AWS framework, right?
Essentially, it's like you set up this skill, like to have a skill up there and be usable. Like you have to pay for it, so it's not free. So yeah, I don't know if the Google stuff's a lot different or anything, or if you could put it in some sort of development mode, or I can put it up there for free because I'm the only one using it or something like that.
I know a lot of their stuff has a free tier, but if it's for personal stuff. So
Yeah, well, that'd be nice, and I think that would be nice to have from them is like some means of me being able to put personal
I
thing up
know the
there. But
Google one they don't charge you because
okay,
I did. I've got mine hooked to do different tasks around the house, and
okay,
and it does that. Um, I wrote the code for it, so I know that they do that for free. So yeah, so that
okay.
I bet you Amazon's got a free tier as
Yeah,
well.
so I got a bunch of Google Home devices sitting in my house that aren't hooked up right now. I'll probably hook one of those up. 'Cause, yeah, I'd like to be able to check the status. Like, hey Google, what's the percentage on my things
Yeah,
like that would
yeah,
be nice.
and that would be a good video
It'd be a
too
cool
because
video.
then
Yeah,
then you'd be able to find that out. So
I just set his off.
just set mine off. Nice, nice. Um, okay, so that was some of the questions that we had here. Some of the other questions we had this week in the Discord, we had one of our MVPs having a problem with their CR10 with their heat bed, which was interesting. Um, they I think they just had a loose wire,
Yeah, something seemed like it
based the
was
way
just
that
loose.
sounded. But that was kind of interesting in that it was perfectly functioning, and then all of a sudden it was no longer
Yeah,
working for them.
they were doing a lot of work on updating the firmware and things of that nature. So there was a few issues along the way. But yeah, I know there was a little back and forth. What else was it? Some issues with steppers and things of that nature too. So we got it mostly sorted. Um, yeah, I think maybe in the video.
I've got a couple of Marlin videos out there as far as basic Marlin commands, kind of
Oh,
working
okay.
our way through a series
Yeah.
there of showing people how to use the Marlin
Mm-hmm.
commands, what they do, how to basically use them. So there's a couple of those videos that are out there now, but nothing to the extent of being able to properly troubleshoot something.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. Like, there's a lot of benefits to being able to update your board that you're using on your printer. You get a lot more control, so you can load up. There's multiple different firmwares out there. We around here we typically have been using Marlin, but there's things like Clipper that are coming around, which can leverage the horsepower of like a Raspberry Pi or another board. Um, there's some other ones out there too, like SmoothieWare and stuff like that, that people use. But yeah, most of them, in my experience so far, has been with Marlin. It's open source, so you can kind of go in there and twiddle with things if you want, and it's very configurable. So it'll work with just about any printer. It supports just a ton of different boards and configurations that people have submitted, and if you've got something a little funky, you can go in there and add it and mess with it. So we've been building our own printers around here, and we can just adjust the config and it works. So as long as you're not doing anything insane, should pretty much cover almost any type of normal printer, FDM especially.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've also saw on the chat this week, there was a lot of different people in the Discord asking questions um, regarding calibration. You were really talking about that printer calibration, and I think that's probably one of the. And matter of fact, I was talking to a friend at work about that this week as well. Um, they had recently upgraded their SK or their Ender 3 to put the SKR in. They were reporting that they were getting stringing, that it seemed to work perfectly fine before, but then when they switched the board, they installed all the software and it wasn't printing correctly. And I said, well, did we copy the values over from the old board? And we didn't, or he didn't, I should say. So we didn't copy the values from the board. So I said, plug the board in, to USB, pull the values off of there, change those, it'll probably fix your problem. But that is one of the biggest things that I find on 3D printers that cause so much trouble for people is getting them properly calibrated, of being able to set the extrusion, making sure that that extrusion is coming out as close to the 100 millimeters that you extrude. And then also the calibration cubes, making sure your X, Y, and Z are accurately set up, because you get a wide variance in 3D printers. I've seen quite a number of them, where people are constantly changing horizontal expansion or whatever to pull it back, quarter of a millimeter. So
Yeah, and that you see a lot of people do that. And, I do a lot of talk up like they're having extrusion issues, so they just go in the software and tell it to extrude like 110%. My thought is, well, I've got the ability just to fix the problem at the
right,
source. I can go and adjust, the steps and things. So that, to me, that's nice. Like I've got more levers I can use, whereas the especially in the locked down firmwares, I mean, your only choice is to depend on these little hacks you have to do on your print. So every profile you set up, you have to make sure it has these things accounted for. And then if it shifts for any reason, wheels are wearing out, what have you. But that's kind of like my mindset, given my experience. Building my own thing is nice. I can kind of control it. If something breaks, I know what it is. I can replace it.
yep. No, that's
Yeah.
definitely great.
Yeah, the configuration. If you're ever going to swap your board out, definitely there's a set of configuration values that are typically that can be exported out and changed without changing the firmware. And so you want to make sure to save those because some of those could have been adjusted specifically for your machine. Again, this would be if you're going with something that was running Marlin before, which a lot of the Chinese printers do. So all the Creality stuff is Marlin. A lot of the ANET stuff that is Marlin. So.
Yeah, we ran into that problem last week. We couldn't pull any of my values, so we had to do it all from scratch.
Yeah.
I had a
That was
mighty
challenging.
board.
Yeah, that was definitely challenging. Jesse, why don't you go ahead and talk about that? That was a great project of something that I think we both went into thinking it was going to be a lot easier than we thought. And we're like, oh, we'll just get this done in an hour. And it definitely turned into a larger project. But we got it done. I mean, it's about a day's worth of work.
Yeah, so I had an old, I think it was the first printer Monoprice sold. It was the Monoprice Maker Architect. And it was kind of like a MakerBot clone or like a Flash.
Much like that.
Flash Forge clone, and it had a mighty board in it. And I had lent it to a friend, and he was having trouble. Like it uses compressed G code, so like the X3G. He was having trouble like using any slicers with it, and he got some to work, but he had to like mess around with like the sizing because the sizing was off. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to change this board. So I bought the SKR board and brought it over to Rob's, and we were trying to install it. The first day we tried to install it, all new connectors, which that's not a big deal. And then the first thing we ran into, my keypad and screen were not compatible, so I ordered a new one of those. And then we started getting the hot end ready to hook up, and when I started stripping the wire, I realized this is really weird wire. I'm like, this is a thermocouple. I don't think the SKR can do thermocouples. So we were looking into what I can do, and it was a weird, like heated block, and it was kind of scuzzy. So I decided
we were going to try to put a thermistor in it, and that didn't work. And
yeah, so I decided to go with the E3D nozzle, so it's similar to like my Prusa and stuff, and I'll be able to buy more parts for it. But then I needed to find a carriage that could fit it, and I found a few on Thingiverse, and they were kind of hit or miss. And then we found an okay one, but the problem was it was for like a motor that extruded on the I wanted direct drive, so a motor that extruded on the opposite side, so I had to like mirror part of the geometry, and it was quite the mess. And then now my carriage doesn't hit my my max. Well, it hits the max end stop, but then my nozzle's like overhangs it by like 15 millimeters. So running into all sorts of things there. It is printing. We printed our calibration cube. We got that going. I just need to get it to talk to Simplify 3D now. I just some setting in there because it's the new printer. It wants to run into the walls. So, but I'll get that figured out.
It works great in Cura. We were printing no problem in Cura.
Yeah. I kind of want to go to the Prusa slicer because that's what I use on the Prusa, and I heard you can support like any printer on there, but I haven't played with that yet. I'd like to move away from Simplify. It's a good program, but I kind of want to be able to lend this out to people, and I want something that they don't have to pay for.
Yeah, and I think
Cura would do that too, but I'm trying to. It'd be nice to go to one slicer for me overall.
Yep.
And I played with the with Slicer for a bit, which is do they still use Slicer as the base for the Prusa?
They do. I think it used to be like Slicer PE, but now I think it's just Prusa Slicer.
Okay.
So it's
I know they were
pretty
working
different.
on their own full brand new thing.
Oh, maybe that's the one now.
Definitely looked a lot different than Slicer. I don't know
it
if
does.
they're still using the engine or if it was just like a pretty face on top of it. Or
I've never used regular Slicer.
Completely different. I mean,
okay, yeah, because at one point it was like Slicer Prusa edition, and then
it was Slicer PE. They called it. I can I can show you it real quick. I got it up and about if you want to see it.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah. You can do the screen share there.
All right.
Uh,
Bam.
let's see.
All right. Can you see it?
Oh, there we
There
go.
you go.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay,
Let
so
me,
yeah, that is like the new thing. Okay, cool. Yeah, because I knew they were working on one, but I wasn't sure how far along it had got. Does it work
Yeah.
with other printers then, or is it?
I've heard it does.
Okay.
I talked to my friend Chris, and he said it always has, but he said the support might not be the best for that. But it'd be nice to be able to go to one printer,
Yeah, definitely.
or one
Yeah,
slicer.
that's the thing.
Sorry.
Like, I've kind of noticed, is when you start doing your own custom ones, you have to start, putting your own profiles into stuff, and it kind of can be a little bit of a challenge there. You just got to fill in all the values and measure things.
Yep. Yeah, and it has all that, and I can add new printers. I just haven't played with it, so
Okay.
So
sometimes you just want things to work.
there is a question in the chat: is PLA waterproof? So yes, PLA is waterproof, but I would not call it weatherproof. It's
I've
it doesn't do very well outdoors. I mean, not for a long period.
I've heard mixed reviews on that. I've seen like Maker's Muse. He had some stuff in his garden for like years, and it seemed to be okay. I think it depends on your specific PLA. Some are with additives. Some are probably better than others. I've also heard of people putting them in aquariums, ponds, I guess, and lasting there. As for waterproof,
I think it's
people
like
use them for planters. But I think it depends on your print settings. A lot of times they recommend you like coat it with wood glue, and then it'll make it watertight.
Okay. Yeah, because you can get gaps and stuff.
Yep.
If it's not printing real good.
I don't know. My personal take on it is if I need something that's a little bit more weatherproof. I mean, you can put PLA outside. You can put TPU outside. That's another option too, but that's flexible. But the nice thing is that I like to use PETG when putting stuff outdoors. It just seems to me. I mean, it's the same stuff water bottles are made out of. It's really much more durable. I mean, that's my take on it. But I mean, PLA is. I mean, it's waterproof. I mean, it's not gonna melt.
No,
The
and I
heat's
think
probably
the
gonna
big
melt
thing
it
is like the
outdoors.
sun. So if you have it, if it's sitting in a really bright spot, that's where I think the most you either get sagging and things like that, or like gonna cause it to fade real bad and get brittle potentially. I think that's where you end up running into trouble. Is it the sun cooks it and makes it kind of that's what really kills it. If it's kind of in a shady spot, you're probably fine. I don't think the water really bugs it much. I mean,
No.
it's
I don't think so.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it seems to be fine as a plastic, but it's just not very durable in the sense of. I mean, if you left it in a hot car, forget it.
It will soften.
It's game over. Yeah.
Don't make any like phone holders out of PLA.
Yeah. I've made that mistake at one point. Not a phone holder, but made something and left it in the car, and yeah, sure enough, it melts pretty easily. So certainly do not want to use that for any high temp work. Now,
a lot of prop makers.
I don't do a lot of ABS. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jesse.
I was gonna say a lot of prop makers use PLA because it's easy to print, easy to finish, and there's they run into that too. They'll leave their prop in the car and it'll sag over temperature.
Yep.
So and then they get a little heartbreak out of that, but they learn a lesson.
right. Yeah.
Now I haven't done a lot of ABS, but I hear the ABS is a little bit more tolerant of outdoor light and heat.
I think ABS in general is good if you get it to print well, and that's the challenge for me is you got to have pretty high heat bed temperature to keep it from warping, and then you really want to have some sort of enclosure to keep the whole thing kind of warm while you're printing it. So if you take all that into consideration, I heard it's just fine to print with. So PLA is good as well, but I think ABS is good for that kind of stuff. It's a little bit stronger. And I think it's kind of like where it's got more give, I guess, than PLA.
Yeah,
PLA will kind of shear crack.
It's a little bit more flexible than.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
if
you
not print it thick, it'll be hard. But like kind of, it's like old toys. Toys are kind of made out of ABS.
Yes. Remote controls. I think most consumer things you see are ABS.
Yeah, and they injection mold it, and it comes out fine because it's once it's in the mold, it's not going anywhere. So they just pump it in there hot and let it cool and let it go, so they can just pump that stuff out.
And if
We
anybody
use
has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll try to answer them best we can.
we use a lot of PLA for test fixtures at work, and we do a lot of stuff in ovens. And then if something needs to go in an oven, we do PET-G because we run tests typically to like 80, 85°C, and it gets saggy and doesn't last. It doesn't like melt,
Yeah.
but it gets soft, and don't think it does well above even like 65, 70°C. So then we go to the
Talking about
PET-G.
PLA.
Yeah.
Yeah. Its glass temp is like, what is it? 60?
Yeah, it's like 60,
It's supposed to be like
65.
60.
Yeah.
So it's once, and it's not like.
And that's like pure PLA.
It's
that's
a pretty
not even
long
doped
transition.
With,
yeah.
And
that's the thing. Like
pigment.
ABS and PET-G have a much higher glass temp, but or actually PET-G doesn't have much higher of a glass temp, but it's got like a longer transition. It's weird because the glass temp isn't like everything. There's also like that amount of heat to where it actually starts to melt. There's a difference there. So, but I think ABS holds up better too under more heat. This is evidenced by a lot of things in cars. Again, you have plastic vents and all that stuff. That was PLA. That's saggy vents.
Mm-hmm.
That's a weird.
So, what is excuse me? What is your current favorite filament? What are you using right now?
Yeah, I guess I haven't really had a great one. I think some of the ones that have printed the best for me. I kind of just go with cheaper stuff. I mean, I'm kind of like a little bit cheap, so I just find good deals all the time. So good filament, bad filament. I kind of just roll the dice. But yeah, I think one of the better ones I've printed with is I bought like a roll of Hatchbox, which is black. That stuff laid down really nice. I did
I've heard good
very
stuff
good with
at
temperature.
Hatchbox. Yep.
I think the biggest problem I've had recently is I run a hardened steel nozzle, and I think that affects my ability to assess filaments because I get a lot of stringing. So I'm going to be looking at getting like a tungsten nozzle or something like that so that I've got the hardness, but I can still print normally.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the Hatchbox one has probably been the one that I had the least amount of headache with, for sure.
How about you, Jesse? What are you currently printing with that you like?
I use a lot of Hatchbox and 3D Solutech. I recently had an issue with a company that doesn't exist anymore. I was printing some PET-G for my carriage, and it was from I think it's Maker Geek, and I had a really bad jam printed overnight, like just printing air for most of the night. And then I tried to like load it and it wasn't loading. I thought the nozzle was jammed. And then finally I looked at the end of the filament and there's a big honking chunk. It was 2.7 millimeters.
Wow.
I'm like, how the heck did they like fuse two pieces to get like, well, how does that happen? That was pretty awful. Cut that off and printed fine again.
Huh. Yeah, and that's the big thing you have to worry about. Like when you get these like weird ones, you get and even like I've heard stories of like even decent brands where it's just you get a bad roll every now and then sometimes, and it's got a bulge or something weird got in there. So
I had some really awful. I bought some rainbow stuff from Amazon, and it felt weird. Like it had a weird texture to it. Like I guess because it's they're kind of putting all the different well, I don't know if they're putting all the different filaments together or not, but it felt wrinkly and it looked wrinkly, and I just got the most jams I've ever seen. I did like a review on it. You could see the pictures. It was very inconsistent. It was wrinkled. Like you could see wrinkles in it.
Yeah,
I just gotta say I've never heard wrinkly described for printer filament ever. So yeah, that's not good.
It kind of felt like there was hard bits in it. It was weird. Like not like you would if you'd bend it, you'd get like a section of a different density, and that's where the wrinkle is.
They may not have been using virgin PLA. It could have been like recycled parts and colors.
Who knows?
Yeah,
that's definitely weird. Especially with the rainbow stuff, it's like depending on how they kind of put that together.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a question in the chat here, but I'll say what I'm currently using before we talk to the question here. I have been using this Overture for a while now. I think I'm on like my 4th or 5th reel of it now, and pretty consistent prints. It's been pretty economical. It's relatively cheap. Probably prints, in my opinion, as good as the Hatchbox.
Yeah,
it lays down really, really well. I've used Hatchbox. That stuff's good too. And then 3D Solutech, hit and miss. I've gotten good rolls of their stuff. I've had I tried their PLA Plus and was not happy with it at all. It
Yeah.
did not seem to. It seemed to string more, and you could tell it was a different formulation, of course, but didn't really.
Yeah, and that's the PLA
very
Plus and the PLA Pro stuff. It's a bit of a gamble because they all do something a little different to do that, and it's not
There's no
particularly
standard of plus. It's
Yeah,
just
it's not
hey,
particularly
we
clear what they're doing.
tweaked it, but
Yeah, so you're not sure if like I've heard stories of people thinking, oh, they've added like some ABS or something in there to try and like make it more ABS like, but still somewhat easy to print. But yeah, when you start mixing ABS in there, then you're gonna start having ABS problems. So yeah, that's the one big problem is the manufacturers, they don't really tell you exactly what's going into these things. So you're buying this filament, who knows?
And Daniel
if it's actually full PLA or not.
Daniel in chat says he's gone through 3 spools of Overture as well and had no issues using it. So
No,
I think it's been pretty solid.
I went through a spool of blue, and that worked really well. That's actually what's all over my 301.
Yep.
And then what else did I just bought a bunch of rolls of it now. I just haven't used it yet. So I got like some black and red, so I'd be interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, and maybe right at the end of the show today, we can kind of give some sneak peeks of some projects that we're working on. So definitely some cool stuff we'll touch base with at the end of the show. But so Boss Hog has a question here, and his question is, why does the nozzle on my Ender 3 hit the print, breaking it from the build plate when I print tall prints? The bed is level. So I know I've had this problem. I'm sure, Jesse, you've had this problem as well. Something taller you're printing, and it ends up coming off the build plate.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's, you just have to get that thing glued on the plate because it's, especially for tall stuff, I mean, that's when I would probably use more glue more than I would for a shorter print.
Well, I find it's like 2 things, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely a lot of different stuff.
And Boss Hog, we're not sure the size of the print that you're printing, but I first discovered this myself, and I had the same problem printing benchies. I would get up to the same point on my benchy every single time. And it would get right up to the top, right where it's about ready to do the little stove pipe up the top. And sure enough, my Ender would hit it, and it would knock it off the build plate, the exact same thing. But I found that it was 2 things. First, I was using a skirt. I was not using a brim. So what I found is that, to your point of gluing it or putting glue down to get it to stick better, I had that same problem where it would, on a skirt, knock it off every time because it would just, it only had a very small space to adhere to the bed. But when I switched over to a brim, it spread that out and it kept it from knocking it off. I think the other problem with tall prints versus, say, something that's shorter is that the taller you get on your print, the higher that shear force is going to be at the bottom. So you just got leverage working for it, right? I mean, you touch the top and it's applying all that force on the bottom.
So that's the thing. Like anything, if you're going to print anything tall, especially if it's kind of skinny, always do a brim, and you want to kind of adjust your brim. Like if you got something really small, like trying to print like a wand or something, for example, like you're going to want a pretty good sized brim to really kind of keep it from tipping off. And even then, like you're still kind of dependent on that brim contact with the print. So
the other thing no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, another thing with the Ender, especially, is because the bed kind of moves back and forth. It's constantly kind of doing that, and it only takes a little bit of a nick on the top. That nozzle just kind of touches it the wrong way, or leaves a little a little booger on there, and it grabs that as it's coming through.
So I found the other thing that I do for very tall prints, ones that are narrow and tall. The other thing that I do is I will turn Z-Hop on. And it does lengthen. It does lengthen the print. It makes it a lot longer to get it done. But when it comes down, it's coming down to the spot that it's supposed to print at, versus maybe traveling back and having a chance to grab one of those little blobs on the outside if there is one. But that's the other thing that I found very helpful for that.
There's another setting, like I know in Cura, and I believe other ones have some of the things. Like Cura, they call it combing. Essentially, it's a means of like it'll run the nozzle across the print without doing a retraction, so it helps speed up the print. But it also means that you've got the nozzle kind of pulling across the print. If you've ever seen like lines coming across in your infill or like in your skins that aren't like parallel with the other ones, that's what that is. And so I typically turn combing off because I find it either does that, it knocks my print over, or it just kind of blobs up filament where I don't want it. I prefer the retraction because it leaves artifacts in the wall.
Yeah, I only do the combing and infill.
Yeah.
So hi, Brian. We see Brian from Brian Vines, his VV3D channel. Make sure you guys go ahead and check out his channel as well. A lot of really good videos that he's got out there. And say hi to Michael as well. Welcome, Michael.
Hello.
Yeah, definitely combing I turn off. And that was one of the most frustrating things when I got started in 3D printing is I couldn't understand why, when I first got started, why do my print faces that are on a piece of glass always have like these strange lines going through it? And then once I figured out how to turn that combing off, that was it. Infill only.
No, and it does. I mean, it will improve the print speed. So if you're not really worried about aesthetics, you can leave it on. But I would say for tall stuff especially, it's just dangerous. And Z-Hop is good for that too, to kind of get the nozzle away from when it's doing its travels, especially. Because that's essentially what combing. Combing will leave the nozzle just pouring out during a travel. And that's where you get those little ridges where that nozzle can go across and grab onto it. So. There's a lot of little things, and I encourage everyone, anyone doing 3D printing, like just look through the settings, read the descriptions. Here, especially, I mean, every setting comes with a pretty good description of like what it is.
There's
you can find stuff online.
Plugin for that has like documentation.
Oh, even better.
Where you can like click on it and brings up like full documentation on it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because I know and that's the thing. Like just read through them, and you can even go in the advanced things. You don't have to mess with all the settings because a lot of them will pre-fill. If you just change the print speed, it'll kind of adjust the other ones for you. So, but it is it's interesting to go look at all the different. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do.
It can be very intimidating for somebody new to 3D printing on just seeing all the different options. Because I know when I originally started, I was like, I don't know what any of this stuff does. And
the big thing is
you have to put an effort into it. I mean, if you really want to get good with your 3D prints and get those tuned in, you got to make that effort.
Yep. Yeah, and especially for the printers that you can't change the firmware or upgrade boards and stuff like that. I mean, you got to kind of work with the slicers. But take it one step at a time, change one setting at a time, kind of understand what it does to your print. And the other thing I encourage you to know is, one set of print settings may not be good for every print. If you're printing something like a model or something, there may be a better print setting than if you're printing, a structural part.
That is a huge tip. Is really tuning the settings for the print or tuning the settings for the filament, because that is equally important. Because there's so many times that I'll see a filament that I'm like, let's give this one a try. It looks really, really cool. And I buy it, and then I put it on the printer, and it's stringing, and it's doing all sorts of things. But once you get it tuned in, and you know what the problem is, that definitely helps out a ton.
Keep track of that stuff. Yeah, and then Kira's got profiles as well, so you can have it kind of keep track of which temperatures work, how much you need to retract, that kind of stuff. So.
Yep. You can just pass that over here.
I would also like to mention things that I found helpful. Simplify 3D, and I'm sure others, has a visual troubleshooting guide. So you can go on there and be like, oh, my print is having this issue, and it gives you notes on how to fix that issue. The only thing is each slicer seems to call things different things. So
I've actually looked at that. They've got a pretty good and it's got the pictures, like you said. That's actually really helpful because even me, I'll be like, what the heck's going on? And I can't even remember what might be going on. So I'll use theirs to kind of narrow it down to a few things and be like, oh yeah, maybe it's this. So I mean, the last big thing I had was I was getting a lot of my walls weren't consistent at all, and it just came down to my printer needed to be tightened up. So it was too loose, so I was getting a lot of wobble in my V and stuff.
Yeah, I would definitely say 3D printing is not one of those hobbies you get in expecting to pick up a power saw, and just cut the wood. It doesn't work that way. You literally have to learn how to use the tool. It's a far more complicated tool. Even, and Jesse, you and I have talked about this a couple of times. You have a Prusa specifically because you wanted it more like a tool. Just turn it on, put it on, and just get a decent print out of it.
That didn't work out right away.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's like, it's a fun hobby because I think it can be frustrating if you're not, if you just want to just print stuff and not worry about it. But I think if you kind of enjoy the adventure, um, that's kind of us in a nutshell. Like we enjoy oh, okay, well, maybe if I just tweak this a little bit, it'll work better. Or if
Yep.
how do I get to print just that little bit faster? I want to get
Or
my parts
tearing
out
apart
quicker.
the whole thing just to
Yeah.
try to fix a problem that really isn't a problem. I've of course never done that.
Well, that's the thing. Like, especially like the people in the Discord. I mean, we have plenty of people coming with issues, and we try to help them, step by step. Don't you're gonna have to tackle the problem in a way that's not intimidating. Don't get intimidated by the problem. Kind of, we'll try to help you work
Well, and
through
that's
it
why
one
we
step at a
wanted to
time.
put together the show, is so that way we can kind of talk about some of those problems. Because, and if you haven't joined our Discord, definitely check it out. I think we're almost up to 100 people that have joined that Discord now, and we're all in there. We constantly talk about different problems or projects or whatever we're working on, but it's really been great, and I think that for me, I get as much as I put into it. I mean, I'm constantly helping people with print issues or whatever.
Even when we're not there, there's people.
Right, and other people like Boss Hog, who's in our chat here today. He's in there helping out and lending a hand when he can as well. So no, I think it's great that we've built a community of people that are all helping each other, and it's really great. So
you come up and show
thank you all.
Show off prints and stuff.
Yep, show off your prints, show off whatever you got. Yeah, it's definitely good stuff. So speaking of showing off prints, Jesse, do you want to show off your latest project you've been working on? I know it's a little past the date, but it will be totally awesome for the next coming holiday season. That thing is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I've been working on I'm working on a tree topper. I bought one from Amazon, an RGB one, and it died after one season. And so of course I decided I'd make one that costs 4 times as much and takes so much more work. So I've been working on it here. I got some electronics going in it. This is the max size I could print on my Prusa. I wish it was a little bigger, but I'm dealing with what I have. It has 31 LEDs. They are dot star. They're not Neopixels. The difference is the Neopixels have one data line. They don't have a clock, so they have more stringent timing requirements. Dot star is a APA 102 chip. Here it is, and it's basically runs on SPI. So
that you can do faster updates then.
Yeah, and I bought those from Adafruit, and I bought some breakout boards from them as well. But the thing I didn't like about the breakout boards is they were 3 pins on each side, so it was like power, data in, data in, clock in, and ground, data out, clock out. But that doesn't lend itself well to wiring, so I designed some circuit boards that are like powered, data in, clock in, ground, and then power and ground are on the other side too, so I can just wire them all in a row
together.
So yeah,
so they sell them individually then, or they?
Yeah, so they sell them at Adafruit. They sell them as like 10 LEDs in like a little bit of a reel. Cut tape, I guess it would be. And then they sell 10 boards. You got to make them yourself. And one thing I do know about LEDs from previous works is they are very temperature dependent. You can break them pretty easily.
Yeah.
So I had my toaster reflow oven, and I reflowed these ones, and
you built that reflow oven, right?
I did. It's a toaster oven. It's at work. We've been using it successfully. But I did end up frying some LEDs because my temperature settings weren't right, and I had a lot of overshoot. And so people at Adafruit were pretty helpful in their forums with suggestions. Once I put an extra thermocouple in there to actually measure what was going on, because mine are floating in the air, I saw that it was going way over. I profiled it, and it was so I ran some more today. They seem to come out okay, but I need to do some work on that reflow oven. Oh, and it's going to have an ESP chip in it, so I can do over-the-air updates, but mostly so I can change modes. Yes, you can do PID tuning on a toaster oven. There's a lot of people that use toaster ovens for reflow.
Yeah,
you can actually get full kits And what's helpful is if you can add like insulation in there, and also like a reflective, like a foil, because then you reflect all that heat in there. And if you can make it like if you can add airflow, then you can make like convection oven, and then it's a little more uniform. Mine is a little cheesy. I have two thermocouples, but they're like SPY, and just the way I had the LCD screen and the thermocouples reading, it's a little slow, so I couldn't do a PID really well, and I didn't have a there. I just kind of do on-off control. I do a little bit of PWM to get a little bit of a ramp, but it's a relay that's um, I'm not doing zero cross on it. So like it's an AC signal I'm controlling, and it's going up and down like a sine wave. And it looks, is the control signal high when my waveform is about to start, then go high. So my PWM isn't exact; it's asynchronous to the AC line, so it doesn't work perfectly, but it does the job well enough, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a toaster oven that doesn't see a ton of use.
Now it's going to be a reflow oven.
Yeah, maybe.
Sounds like a video.
Because especially the solder melts at about 350, 400.
Ooh. Oh, are you talking Fahrenheit or Celsius? Celsius.
Fahrenheit, sorry.
Celsius, it's around if it's around 190 to 230,
Yeah.
depending if you have leaded or lead free. So
Yeah.
So I'm sure everybody here watching doesn't necessarily know what a reflow oven is. So maybe a quick description there, Jesse.
Okay, so a reflow oven is an oven that you typically what they do when they're making a lot of circuit boards, they don't hand solder everything. They have a paste, which is like a flux material. It's a liquid that has little tiny metal balls in it, the solder balls, and the paste is put evenly over all the boards via stencil, which is like a flat piece with a bunch of holes in it where the solder is supposed to go. So it's nice and even. You squeegee it across it. And then you put the components on there, and they're held on with surface tension. And then they go through this oven, which has a very specific profile. It kind of goes like this. It holds for a bit, and then goes up again and holds for a bit, and then comes back down. And that melts all the solder, and then it's the components. If you have your paste settings right, the components kind of like align themselves perfectly and just solder themselves to the board. Yeah, it's really nice. It's really beautiful to watch.
Oh, yeah.
If you're doing it by hand though, like I am with a syringe, you can get like tombstone stuff, because if you get too much solder on one side, the surface tension like pulls your chip components up. But when you're dealing with a part that has 6 leads like these LEDs, it's not really much of an issue. So there's a lot of tension to hold it on. But
And you can just use your everyday toaster oven, slightly modified.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, it sounds like it's quite modified actually. Yeah.
It's I added a solid state relay, an Arduino, and some thermocouples. And I think I got ripped off actually. I bought this toaster oven with the intent of turning it into a reflow, and I bought it from someone in a parking lot at a Texas Roadhouse, and I didn't actually do the project till a couple of years later, and I think I paid her $20, and then when I went to like pull it out to work on it, it said Big Lots $15. I'm like, oh no.
I just want to say I couldn't have made up that story. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I was pretty upset.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Toaster oven in a parking lot.
So did the
Nice.
one you have like temperature control built in, or did you just did it
No.
have a timer?
It had a timer, so I pulled it out. I don't know if I have a picture of it.
The one I have actually has like temperature control. It has 2 elements, top and bottom.
This one does too.
Yeah. I wonder if the temperature I could monkey with the temperature control to like control mine.
Just pull it out and put an Arduino in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would still control it with Arduino. I'm just wondering if I could like reuse the lines and stuff, because it depends on how you have it hooked up. If it's a variable resistor or whatever it is, as it looks.
And if anybody has any questions in the chat for us that you'd like us to maybe attempt to answer with your maker projects, feel free to post them in the chat, or you can fill out the little form at the bottom. Even if we don't get to your question today, because we're getting up to our hour here. This was scheduled to be an hour-long show, but we might go a little bit over. I also want to kind of go through a couple couple of sneak peek on some projects that we're working on here on the channel, so that might be kind of cool as well. So, um, if anybody has any questions, let us know. Uh, Apparently, Rebecca wants to know if you got a free steak meal in the parking lot. I thinking he
No.
didn't.
I didn't even go there to eat. I just met that person there because it was a convenient area of town, and then went on my way.
Not his.
I have eaten there in
Not
the
his
future
house.
though. It's they have good rolls.
They do have good rolls, and
They
that
got that
butter is
honey
great.
butter.
Oh yeah,
Oh, or is it apple? I think it's honey.
it's
Yeah,
honey.
it's really
Yeah,
good.
it's like honey. Yeah, something. Yeah. No, it's delicious. That's what it is.
Texas Roadhouse was the first mistake. Free peanuts.
Yeah,
Nice.
the only
Yes.
my wife's allergic to peanuts, so
Oh
it's
no.
it's a gamble. Like we've been there before, and she's fine, but it's you got to watch it. You know, we always
It's
make
a
them.
gamble. What
It's got to
is
be
it?
in the
You gotta
air.
clear the
at that
table of all the
point.
peanuts. You know, the floor is just covered in peanuts, so that's the problem. I
Oh
don't know
my
if they still let you
gosh.
do that anymore, or if they make
Yeah,
it.
they do.
Do they?
I-
Yeah.
I'm not sure I could get somebody to convince me. So we'd like you to go to this restaurant where it's toxic everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we'll make sure that it's not toxic where
Yeah.
you're sitting.
No, it was fine. Like I think it's not a huge allergy, so like she has to like eat the peanut to be a problem. So as long as she's not like touching them or eating them, it's not a big deal. But yeah, it's you know there's other places.
Very cool. Very cool. So I don't see any questions in the chat here. I guess we can talk about some of the projects we got coming up on the channel here. I have got one of them here that we will see if I can power on here. Did you my USB cable?
What the one?
Just a USB cable. It just has to have some power here. Oh wait, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Otherwise, I got this one. Or nope, that's just an extension.
So let me see if I can get this powered on here. So we've got an interesting little project that I've been working on, and this one may be one of the next ones to get released here. So what you can see here, and let me see if we can. There we go. So you can see here, this is a remote control. It's just currently plugged in via USB. But this is a 3D printer remote control. So what this does is basically you take this anywhere in your house and you can go ahead and via remote control your 3D printer. So I'm just about wrapping up this project here. It's got a touchscreen interface, but it's kind of neat to be able to take your 3D printer and put it on a remote control. So if I'm upstairs and I want to heat up my printer, I just grab the remote. You know, because why would I not have a remote from a 3D printer? So that's going to be coming here pretty soon. Let's see, you got another question in here. Is there any benefit on upgrades in Marlin? So when you say benefit of upgrades, are you talking version 1 to version 2.0? Because there certainly is.
Or just yeah, I mean, I think if you're talking about stock firmware that came with your printer, probably.
Yeah, from 1 to 2. Yeah, so if it's from 1 to 2, yeah, I mean we got a couple advantages, right? 2 is now, built to be
32-bit.
Right, built to use the 32-bit boards. It's also got a big board offering because it's now on 32-bit boards, just not an 8-bit board. So you're going to get a little bit faster performance. Some of the boards have floating point. So there is.
I'm not sure if it's being used. I don't think Merlin really takes advantage of it, but it's a possibility in the future. I mean, I think as this keeps going, now that they're on 32-bit, I think there's definitely some more room to do some more impressive things. I mean, theoretically, this could run on ARM as well down the road. So, I mean, we'll see where they go with it. But yeah, the 2.0, I think, is just kind of the big thing was getting it on 32-bit. Things like that. So a lot of the features are similar at least from 1.19 to 2. Now, if you're on 1.18 or earlier, there's a lot of neat stuff.
Well, it looks like he's on a stock Ender 3.
Yeah.
So my biggest concern, anytime I hear somebody on a stock Ender 3, I think we all know what I'm going to say. Thermal runaway, right? I mean, that is like the biggest reason to upgrade the stock firmware.
Yep.
And if you don't want to go with the core Marlin, TH3D has some great firmware that's already built, ready to go. The stock firmware for the Ender 3, I hear now that they've got that fixed and they finally have that, but
That's the thing.
I don't know what version of Ender 3 you bought.
That's just it.
So
yeah.
I would presume it does not have thermal runaway until proven otherwise.
And unless you buy it direct from them, or but they've got the newer boards too, which I think if you have to have the newer board, and then it has the thermal runaway, because some of the newer boards they put the silent steppers on, so they've got a bunch of stuff coming up.
Yep.
Now, but it's for my money, I can get an SKR with really nice quiet steppers for the same amount of money as their silent stepper board upgrade costs. Now their board drops in and you don't have to mess with it. So
well, and we have the 1.4, right? So I did that video on the 1.4. One of the videos I'm going to be putting together here pretty soon is I'm going to be upgrading my 301 and putting the SKR 1.4 in there, primarily because I want, that is more, the 301's kind of my reference printer, if you will. That's the one that I really put a lot of effort into making sure that it's got more new technology in it. And
it's meant to be your main one.
Yeah, it's the printer. So I use that one, and that's going to get the 1.4. So I'm going to have an upgrade video on that, but it would really apply to any SKR upgrade. But yeah, it's I'm looking forward to that for RGB lights and a lot of other features that are now embedded on the board. So that's a really cool feature.
Anything cool has RGB right now. So just like the star that Jesse got, if it doesn't change colors, it's no good. So
it's got to change colors.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, especially in the channel, we've had a few people come through, asking about it, and if you're a little bit worried about getting a board and having to put Marlin on it, it's not that bad. They have pretty good documentation, and if you jump in the channel, we can help. I know I helped somebody the other day getting there. They were building one of the 201s, and they needed some help with the firmware, so I actually had to update it because we hadn't updated it for the actual 2.0 release. So I got that updated, and he said it was working. So that was,
so we did get that working?
As far as I know, I think he said he got it set up.
That's
and
awesome.
Was able to do some basic stuff. I think he was still working on getting everything set up.
And yeah, if you're getting a heating failed for the bed and printer halted, then it looks like the thermal runaway is definitely working. Yep.
Well, and it could be, it is funny about that because it could be that it's not heated at all. So like if it turns it on and you can't keep it up, it'll say that. So I mean, there's a lot of different failure modes and stuff. I don't know if they're all enabled in that.
Yep. So we definitely we talked about the tentacle project a little bit here. That was one of the ones. And let's see here. So you're not able to. It won't heat up your bed at all. If it won't heat up your bed at all, well, that you're kind of looking at troubleshooting at that point.
Yeah. So there's a few different things to check. So there's fuses on the blackboard.
No, I don't think there is.
So if
I've got one laying around.
It may or may not be replaceable. But anyway, so the first thing to check would be heater wires. If you have a multimeter, like I would recommend buying one. They're not that you can buy a cheap one. Like they all pretty much work the same, especially if all you're doing is just basic voltage stuff. You don't need a super high precision multimeter. So I would say for any 3D printer, it's handy to have one. Especially anything with like open wires, like in MV3, where there's wires kind of hanging around. It's all too easy to get that heater wire hung around something and pull it out. So yeah, check all your connections. Is the first thing, and then make sure it's not shorted. The other one. So sometimes the wires up by the bed itself can pull off. There is a strain relief on the newer one, but and mine has one, so they've been on there for a while. But that's kind of the first place to check is make sure the wires are securely attached to the bed itself, and then check by the board and make sure that they're screwed in there.
And you can check the continuity too to make sure that it's getting all the way down to the board.
Yeah,
so
check the wires.
That's another thing to really check on.
I would
wires being
look at the LCD and see if it gives you a temperature, because it probably won't work if it can't read at all, and then that would point at the thermistor versus the actual heating element.
I mean, if the thermistor got caught And the Ender
They're tiny.
3s in the back of them, a lot of them have
all
that
too
issue
easy.
where it catches on that back bar on the Ender 3. And I saw prints that are out there where people extend it so that way it doesn't grab. So if you definitely caught an edge of the thermistor or the heat bed wire, you could have either pulled it loose, or if you broke the thermistor on there and you turn it on, it should say that there's maybe a negative value, or
usually
certainly
it'll be
not
like,
the right temperature
it'll be pretty wonky
for ambient temperature in your air.
Yeah, the way to test that is just if you kind of just put your hand under the bed, if you can get under there, and like hold your finger where the thermistor is, it should warm up. So like it should show the temperature rise from your just the heat from your finger or whatever.
Yep.
Just hold it on there for 15, 20 seconds. It should raise slightly. So that's usually pretty easy to test. So yeah, it's kind of you have to go through step by step, and that's the thing. Like again, don't get intimidated by it. Just kind of like walk through the different things. So kind of knowing where to go and what to look at.
Yep, it's just a step by step process.
Yeah, usually it's not firmware. If it just kind of breaks randomly, the firmware kind of is the firmware. It's not really modifiable. It's not like the software in your computer that can kind of update itself, and it might break one day because the new update doesn't work. It's kind of is what it is. Whatever you put on there is what on there.
Yep.
And it's typically outside of maybe something getting messed up and then you restart. But if you reboot, it should reset. So if it's consistently broken, probably something wiring or electrical.
And there is a question in here, Nick. Maybe you can answer this one because you do a little bit more robotics. Someone asked, anybody know how to program a robot arm? Probably need a little more info on what type of robot arm, but
yeah,
you've done a lot of robotics.
Yeah. So one thing that we have to play with more is arms and stuff. The team we do is we do a lot of motors and stuff, but yeah, when you're talking about arms, you're getting into like servos and things, and then controlling different axes. So like some of the more advanced ones now are like 6-axis, so they can actually turn and rotate and then they go up around. I mean, they're pretty much like our motion for the most part, if not better actually than what a human can do.
It looks like they mentioned Robo DK software, and looking that up, it looks like it's an industrial robot arm.
Oh boy, okay. Yeah, in that case, yeah, that's probably out of my realm. But yeah, I mean, just building from scratch.
It is for now.
Servos and
but
stuff.
If you want to send us a robot arm, we'll figure it out for you.
Right,
I mean,
right.
we'll definitely figure it out.
I live in.
Send us any cool stuff. Yeah.
I live in Janesville, and one thing we're known for is the GM plant closing. And several times they've had auctions on their equipment, and they had some robot arms for sale.
Really?
And I was really thinking about it, but I'm like, yeah, they probably don't have like the dongle for control, and I don't have any of the software, and usually that stuff's not free. And
custom connectors.
So it would just be an expensive paper. Well,
I don't know. That's a lot of hydraulic pistons that cost a lot of money that we can play with.
Oh, yeah, it depends on what kind it was. It could be hydraulic or it could be electrical too. So.
Oh yeah, I still think we need that. Have they still got those auctioned off? We'll check it out, Jess.
I feel like you'd have to pretty much rip all the controls out and wire it yourself, and then who knows how much power it would take. So those arms can be pretty big.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think they're not often 120 systems. They're
yeah. 3-phase power stuff. Yeah. Good luck with that.
Do we suggest a change in the main boards, and if so, which one? So, honestly, when it comes to the Ender 3, here's an example of the exact board that's in the Ender 3. You can change it. It's really up to you. I think the biggest benefits of changing the board out are you can add the silent stepper drivers, and then you've got more expandability. I think those are really the only two use cases, in my opinion, for swapping the board out.
Yeah.
If you have an Ender 3 and it's printing and the noise doesn't bother you, I see no reason to upgrade it.
Yeah,
not for an arbitrary reason. I mean, there's maybe some print artifacts,
but it's not. It's if you're looking for like print quality improvements.
Well,
probably not going to see a huge jump in that.
Well, you will from the aspect of you're not going to see like salmon skin in it because
you'll get smoother.
You'll get a smoother print with better drivers because the 84988s that are in these.
But it really depends on what
are not all that great.
If you're going to sand down your prints every time you want to make something nice and paint it, like you're not going to see any of that anyways. So I think it really depends on what you're doing with it. And like, for me and, Jesse and Rob here, I mean, we like to just mess with stuff and we can't leave it alone. So, that's why we'll pull out the board, put another board in and say, yeah, what can I do with this thing? Because we want to turn on all the features. And there's a lot more in the Marlin firmware that won't fit on the board that comes with it. And because it's 8-bit, it is a bit limited in its ability to run at higher speeds, stay accurate, that kind of stuff. So, and the silent steppers are not only quiet, but they are smoother. So it does help with some of the artifacting things that you would get. Like I know on mine I get the zebra striping, especially you can see it like clear as day on the benches for sure. But that's a big artifact, and then you got the salmon skin as well.
I think one of the biggest things for me, and I don't know about Jesse, Nick, I don't know how you guys feel, but I think that when I'm working on a project or I want to work on something, I generally try to bring it all down to my use case for it, right? And I think a lot of people get wrapped up in 3D printing and feel like they have to, I have to put bed leveling on. I have to do this. I have to do that. In the fact is, you really don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
If the Ender 3 prints out of the box and works fine for you, and you print 2 prints a week, and that is all you do, and you don't mind leveling the bed occasionally, I would not invest a dime into the Ender 3. But if you're printing every day of the week, and
you're turning it into like a profit thing,
right?
Like
then
that.
I think that changes your use case. But I don't know. I think the Ender 3 is a good quality entry level printer for anybody that wants to get something done. But at the same time, you can upgrade it and get a way better printer if you want to go down that route. But if you don't need it, it's good entry level.
Like it is kind of a decent base, and then you can add to it. So you can because the steppers and all the limit switches, like everything is pretty simple digital circuitry. It's like you can throw whatever board in there, and they all all these boards come with a lot of the same connections and things like that. A lot of stuff just plugs in. The SKR, a lot of the connectors on the Ender plug right into the SKRs. I mean, like when you swap the board, like it's not connecting it to the hard. You just have to be able to, build the firmware, which again is download it, open it, click build, and then upload it. It's fairly straightforward. So if you're ever thinking, you want to do something, or you're reading something that you think, it'll help with, it's worth having fun with. It's it's a bit of an investment. Yeah, again, it's like if it prints fine, and specifically with the Ender 3, the only upgrades I tell people that are absolutely necessary are the extruder. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, get a different bed surface. I don't care what you get, but the one it comes with is useless, in my opinion. And sorry if anybody likes it. I think it's terrible. Prints don't stick to it. It's too easy to get dug into. Like glass is a little more resilient in that regard. If a nozzle hits the glass, like as long as you don't punch it, it should be pretty good. Like you can grind on that okay. It's not a big deal. But and then the extruder, like getting just like one of the metal ones, they're not that expensive. You can find them on Amazon for like
I put the micro Swiss in mine, and I was very happy with it.
The not even the hot end, like
just the mechanical extruder.
Yeah, just the on the stepper there. So yeah, the feeder essentially. So and then the Bowden coupler. So those couplers that comes with just come out. So like you'll get about a week or two into owning the printer, and that tube's gonna come flying out. So those are kind of the upgrades I always recommend, is that extruder and then the couplers, and you can get all that stuff on. That's like $20, $25, and then if you want to do the glass bed, you can get the glass pretty cheap. And if you can go
Gadget Angels saying here 174 on sale for an Ender 3.
So all in, you're under $200.
It is the Ender 3. I feel, and you'll relate to this because you have one. I don't know if you ever owned one, Jesse, but I feel like the Ender 3 is the Commodore 64 of 3D printers. I mean, it's the very much consumer one that gets sold a lot because it does what it does well at a good price.
It's in a good niche where it's got a decent build area. It's not huge. It's not tiny. A lot of the printers that were in the price range of the Ender 3 when it came out were 100, 120 mil beds. It's pretty tiny. Like you can print little models and stuff, and that's cool. But like if you wanted to print more functional stuff, it became a little more difficult at that size. So I think it was get a decent bed. Thing pretty much reliably worked. The frame is sturdy. Like the extrusion that you use, I mean, it's fine. Like you don't get a lot of wobble in the height and all that stuff. So I think it had a lot of good stuff going for it. And then they slapped that $200 some price tag on it. It was like, well, okay. So you get the build volume up with Prusa and all this stuff for significantly less money.
It doesn't print as well as Prusa.
Yeah, not on the box, and that's just it. Like you're gonna sacrifice some of that, and so that's where it's like the Prusa comes with a nicer hot end, nicer nozzles, nicer like rails and stuff, out of the box. So, I mean, there's definitely some advantages to it, but for the price, like it's like, well, you can buy 3 Ender 3s.
Yep. No,
for the
price point, I think it's a great printer.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Like when you're talking about like workhorse printer, like I think that's what it is. It gets the job done, and like I said, with minimal upgrades, it'll run just fine, even with the stock board. Like as long as you don't leave it running for a weekend without keeping an eye on it.
The only thing I think is bad about the Enders, and again, it's the price point, right? Is that I think there's and this has been kind of my complaint. You and I have talked about this offline a lot. Is that I think some of the lower end 3D printers, especially the ones that all come from China, they just seem to lack the fourth screw, if you will, right? So it's like you see where they put 3 screws in, and the fourth screw would just polish the whole thing up, and it's just missing that little bit.
That one bracket they didn't add.
It's like the main board that doesn't have the silent stepper drivers. I'd pay the $5 or $10 for the extra, stepper driver. That's the kind of thing that I think, I don't know that the Chinese printer manufacturers get that somebody will pay that extra $10 to get the better quality features.
And I think Reality is kind of figuring that out because they've been doing a lot of this Pro series now. So they've got, they had the Ender 3, and now they've got the Ender 3 Pro. And the Pro has actually come down quite a bit in price to the point where it's like, it's in the price range where the Ender 3 itself used to be. So they just released this new CR10 version 2, which is pretty awesome. It's a cool printer. And so, I mean, the other thing I would like to see them do, though, is maybe do some other printer designs. So a lot of their printers, and they've got the Ender 5, which is kind of a new design, but it's still like a Cartesian.
There were some things I didn't like about it. One of them was the stepper, shafts out both ends of the stepper on that. So
in the middle,
I wasn't really a fan of that, but
they split the stepper for the Y.
It's still a NEMA standard stepper size, but I just wasn't a fan of the. To me, that just seems like too much.
They were driving both Ys, I think, with the one stepper from opposite sides, which probably helped a little bit with they're going the same. Yeah, good, but it was kind of a wonky thing where I would be worried about the tension.
So a touch LCD recommendation. So for your 3D printer, I presume that you're asking about. Interesting enough, I just and Jesse, maybe you can pop the link in the chat because you can look it up a little bit easier. I have been using this new TFT24. Actually, it's not very new. It's the smaller of the two, but there is a same people that make the SKR, that Big Tree Tech, or it's actually BIQU. I don't know how you pronounce that.
I think they're a reseller.
But they're like the same company. Okay. They make a TFT24 display, and what's really nice about it is you can switch it from the Marlin display, from the the regular one that you would find, and then it also has a touchscreen display, and it swaps back and forth between the two. By just holding down the button, you can do a touchscreen interface, or you can do the regular Marlin interface and switch between them, even while the printer is running. So it's kind of a neat thing. I thought it was pretty cool. I bought it. I need to reprogram that touchscreen interface because I'm not a real fan of it. But yeah, it works. It works really, really well. Thanks for posting that in there, Jesse.
Yeah, because the big thing you run into with a lot of these touchscreen ones is that they don't actually support all of the functionality, so you lose some ability to control the printer through the touchscreen LCD because it doesn't have all of the controls. So one of the nice things about this one is you can kind of flip back to the built-in interface of Marlin so you can do whatever that you need to do there, and then go back to the touchscreen for your day-to-day stuff. So,
Yep. Yep.
and for me, like I run Octoprint, to control my printers. So I mean, I can do a bunch of stuff in there too. So I mean, for my use case, like the LCD is more of kind of like I'm by the printer, maybe I just need to tweak something, or I'm trying to like troubleshoot like a problem, like I'm
Yeah,
trying to
I'm the
home
same way.
accesses or
Most of
something.
the time, I'm not even touching the printer.
Yep.
It's down here in the makerspace, and I'm upstairs on a computer controlling the printer. The only
Keeping
time
an
I
eye on it with the webcam.
taking a print off it or cleaning off a failed print, that's the only time I'm really near the printer.
Yeah, and honestly, on the topic of like Octoprint or something, I mean, if you're looking to invest in your printer to make it easier to use and better,
Yeah.
get a Raspberry Pi and a camera and
Octoprint.
hook it up, and you'll love it, because Octoprint's got plugins. I mean, you can stream your webcam out, so you can watch it remotely. You can control it remotely. There's Android apps and stuff if you can get the networking all set up. But I mean, it's definitely, to me, that's like a good investment, especially if you're going to be away from the house while you're printing. You want to be able to keep an eye on it. If it starts messing up, it knocks your print off or something, you can stop it remotely before you burn through your whole roll.
Yep. That I definitely I hear about people printing on SD cards all the time,
Yeah,
and
That's
I'm always
what I
like,
do.
I'm like, how do you do it?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a hassle getting in and out.
it's got its purpose. I mean, it's great. I took the Ender one time to a maker fair and, printed it off the SD card because I didn't want to mess with Octoprint and everything else. But overall, I mean, I love using the Octoprint. I just could not imagine.
I still don't have that. I need to get it done, but I don't have it yet. SD
I'm
card, that's
free
always what I do.
Saturday or Sunday, Jesse. We can get that running
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, and the big thing, the only caveat there, and the one thing that I've run into is the USB can be a bit of a trouble. So that's one case where, like, if you're plugging into the stock Marlin board, you're gonna probably see a little bit of artifacting on rounded edges, rounded. What am I trying to say? Round surfaces. So that's one thing you have to kind of watch out for is when you're printing on USB, like you might see a little bit of like blobs and stuff show up on your circles, and that's essentially because the USB can't buffer enough commands
And
to keep it moving.
I will say
print slower. That helps, or you can. There's some tweaks you can make if you are building your own.
the sending device does matter too. My friend had a bunch of Monoprice Select Minis, and he was printing from USB, and his computer was slow, and you could see the print pause.
Yeah. Especially like, and that's the thing. Like, I know you, Rob, you actually set up like a PC to do your Octoprint because you saw some issues with like Raspberry.
Right.
As soon as you did the PC, it went away.
Right. And I could talk about that a little bit. So I actually have a couple of first off, on the website there's a blog article that kind of talks about getting Octoprint off of a Raspberry Pi. Now, if you're going to be running a Raspberry Pi and one 3D printer, or maybe even two, it's totally doable. But where I ran into a problem is I wanted two different printers, 2 or 3 different cams.
Mm-hmm.
The problem you run into is the USB bus. It doesn't have enough bandwidth for plugging in, 5 different webcams and 3 different printers. It's just not designed for it. What I ended up finally getting to, and that's what I've put into a couple of videos now, is I have one Raspberry Pi, and it runs all the cameras. That's all it does, just runs cameras. They all turn into IP cameras, and it's a very clean solution for just having the cameras all on one IP address. So that's what I do for the cameras. Then what you were mentioning earlier, on the PC side, I got an inexpensive PC that I had laying around. It's an older media center type PC. I took that out, put an SSD into it just so I didn't have to worry about a hard drive dying. And I installed multiple Octoprints. I've got 3 or 4 running on it. 4 running on it right now. So I could probably run 4 more without any problem at all.
Yeah.
But the bus now doesn't get saturated by camera and by all the printers active. So when those run, everything runs smoothly and I don't have a problem.
Yeah, and it does take a bit of work. Like obviously doing the cameras in the Pi, like you got to kind of know how to set that up. But a lot of it's pretty straightforward. And did you make a video on that? Or?
On which one?
doing the cameras on the Pi?
Not on the well for the three different.
ESPs.
Yeah, I've got a one for the camera. The problem I've heard, so Gadget Angel mentions is the Raspberry Pi has USB 3 and gig Ethernet port. The box that I have that's a PC has USB 3 on it. That still is not enough bandwidth to keep up.
Yeah.
It really is the bandwidth limitations on the
it's a
on the
latency
bus.
issue because of
Yep.
the way USB is designed. You can create contention. So if you've got multiple USB ports on your computer, they're usually broken up into different buses actually. So and each one of those things
Yep.
shares bandwidth. So if you've got 2 hard drives in one bus, they'll actually split that bandwidth. So you can only max it out halfway. So if you can kind of find the different buses, you can get a little more speed sometimes. And it depends on the motherboard too, how they've connected it to the processor, what processor you have, like what chip it's running.
Yep.
You know, is it going direct to the processor? Is it through the North Bridge? Like, there's so many like weird things where it's like until you really dig into it, you can't tell. And the thing with the Raspberry Pi is it's notoriously got kind of
Now
sketchy USB.
I have not tried the Pi 4, but I think
similar.
I have. I think I've tried enough of the Raspberry Pi that I mean I love it for what it is, but I think it's great if I had one printer and one camera, or maybe one printer and 2 cameras. But after that, forget it. I personally, I've dealt with enough hardware and software in my life that for me, I just created a web server, so I've got I can put 20 on there if I want to.
When you get to a certain scale, it's like you have to have something more powerful. It's just the end all be all. And I don't. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Raspberry Pi 4 actually has that much of an upgraded processor. I think it runs a bit faster, but it's not like significantly architecturally different.
One printer and 5 cameras. That is awesome. Nice.
Yeah. Because I think that's the thing. Like the cameras are what chew up your bandwidth. You can run them at a lower res, and it'll help.
And that's what I did in this video. Is there is a video out there that I've got that does show you how to hook up multiple cameras to the Raspberry Pi and turn it basically into an IP camera server. That's all it is. It's just an IP camera server.
Yeah, because I'm thinking I'm going to need more cameras. I just bought a new house, so I got to set up all my 3D printing areas.
But
so
that's exactly. I've got a video out there, so it's called like 4 cams, 1 Pi. So you can get 4 cameras on it, and with one Raspberry Pi.
So. Yeah, then I'll probably run out to print off of like a small PC or something that I've got, because I've got extra stuff just like you do laying around doing nothing.
Yep. We are definitely a lot of parts laying around, and just pick it up and hey, I can build something with that.
And I can't throw that away. That's got to be useful for something.
That's definitely good stuff. Let's see. There were a couple other questions in here I just want to answer real quick. As far as Octoprint, easy to set up if you can basically format a SD card and know how to plug HDMI into the Raspberry Pi and a keyboard and mouse, you can pretty much set up Octoprint. That's really all there is to it. It's a very simple process. There's a distro that has Octoprint on it. It's really easy to set up.
I mean, you pretty much burn the card and plug it in.
That's basically all you have to do, and then configure it. So very, very simple.
Now, if you want to do it from scratch, like what he did and what I've done, it takes a little more work. But there's people who have written pretty good walkthroughs. So
I thought there was another question here. Let me take a look here.
But it is all Linux based, so you're not going to find Windows running Octoprint. I think someone did it or something, but I wouldn't. It's written in Python, I think, the whole thing.
I thought there was another question, but I'm not seeing it now.
In general, it looked like we were talking about, Sanjita was talking about, well, I guess the question about the expertise, I thought maybe that was about the printers in general, but it might have been about the touchscreen, and we've covered that.
Yeah. All right, so
should we talk a little bit about, I mean, it's probably covered to death, but like there's some discussion about, the Ender's cheap, cheap enough to get, it's like $175, or if someone really wants hands off, is it like, how easy do you consider the Ender for someone that's a newbie? What's your entry level? Can't put anything together. I wanna hit print. Like I used to recommend the Prusa because it was like the Cadillac of printers, but I had so much problems with mine. off the
Yeah.
bat. Once I like shaved, or well, I Brillo surfaced the bed, and all my problems went away. And our one at work prints like a dream. It's a workhorse, but that was like a pre-built, and it was like $1,000.
I think I mean, I don't know. I think the Ender is good, but I'm not sure
It's not.
plug it in and press print
Yeah.
button. I don't know that. I don't know that any of the budget lines really do that.
Oh,
You've
you
got to really get
The
up to.
monoprice ones are pre-built, and they're pretty cheap. But I don't know.
They
I
have a
only
lot of
have the
problems too, though. Like they've got quirky stuff. You know, and that's the thing. When you get down to that price point, you're gonna deal with stuff that is a little more hit or miss. So when you're gonna have problems, and you're gonna have to kind of know how to work through them. I think, but I think any 3D printer, like you would spend $2,000 on some of these MakerBot and what's some of the other ones.
Well, I mean, you got like a Dremel.
roll
I mean,
spot.
that's another one that's more point and click. I mean, I think there are definite point and click printers out there, if you
Yeah.
will, or download and
And the
print
biggest
printers.
problem I have with those is they're all proprietary, so you're stuck with their
Well,
software.
and that's it. You know, Da Vinci makes one that's
Oh, yeah, the
basically
filament is like proprietary.
it's
Oh, the chips.
I feel
yeah.
like it's an
Yeah.
inkjet printer, and I don't understand. I mean, I do understand their revenue model, but I don't
Mhm.
understand why they
I
hold
think-
on to that so tightly.
Yeah, and they're expensive. Like you pay a lot for it. You have to buy the filament from them. There's a chip in the reel, and when that chip says the filament's gone, it won't print with that reel installed.
Yeah,
And if you put if that chip's not there, it won't print at all. So it's the wackiest thing.
but the point is, there are 3D printers out there where you can
They're a little more
put it on
print
there,
quick, yeah.
use the proprietary software, or even use regular software
Mhm.
and press print, and it works. I just don't know. My opinion is, I don't know if that helps anybody. To me, I think the key to 3D printing is that it's a really great tool, but you got to learn to use the tool. It's just like your computer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I got my
Well,
computer.
there's people like that too.
Well,
they like they
agreed.
use the computer to look at Facebook, and they have no idea.
And those
how
are
it
called
works.
cell phones.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
you
that's
know.
a funny thing. Like now we moved to tablets and phones. For my purpose, like I want my $1,000 device to do something more than read some stuff on the internet.
Yeah.
I need it to
But
work or something else. For me, it's like when I spend that kind of money, like people buy iPads and they just read Facebook or watch YouTube videos. It's like
it does it really
that
well.
seems like a lot of money to just do that.
But I mean, that's kind of my point, right? So I think when you buy a 3D printer, if that's what you're going for because you just want to turn it on and plug it on and print, then I think there is definitely a market for that. I don't
guess
know
it's
that it's in
interesting to
the
me
budget market.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, what the mentality, what are you going to use it for if that's kind of your mindset
Well,
going into
we
it.
use,
Yeah.
some people just want a tool. There's artists that aren't tech savvy.
That's
There's
true.
people
Yep.
like we use them all the time at work, and I'm the one that
I think for
I'm the one
commercial,
that
it's very
spec'd it out. I'm like, I want that. I want you guys to get that printer because I didn't want to troubleshoot it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm the electrical guy. That's not my world. Like, I don't want to, like, the designers and the mechanicals are the main ones using it. I'm like, I don't want to be in charge of this because I don't want that to be my job. So they got a
Yep.
Prusa, and I help out occasionally, but, mainly the designer guy, like, he just takes care of it all now, and it's really hands off.
Yeah, and I think the Pris is better in that regard. But like you said, you
Yep.
can still have some of the same types of problems because it's still kind of an open frame printer. It can get a little loose or that kind of thing. And I think some of you see these ones that are more kind of they come with the enclosures and things like that. And I think for commercial stuff, like when you're gonna shelling out $5,000 for a printer isn't a big deal. And I think especially now in the commercial realm, the SLA stuff is gonna start taking off. The prices are coming way down. And I think that's, when you start getting into set it and forget it, I think SLA might actually end up, to some extent, I think the problem you deal with there is the resin and the toxicity. And
Yep.
if they ever figure out a way to come up with a non-toxic
They're
resin,
making it better from what I've been
they
reading
can
and seeing.
reduce the
They're making it
toxicity
better.
or come up with like PLA revolutionized.
They're reducing the
became,
smell. I don't know if
Yeah.
they've gotten any less toxic.
And that's just it. Well, I mean, if you can make it
Yeah.
a little bit easier to deal with, I think
Yep.
that's really that last step for SLA because the prints are amazing.
They are.
And it's
like you can buy a $200 SLA and the
Yep.
prints are insane.
I
I'm
guess
gonna
the
get
way-
one.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, I think it's just a matter of time, right?
Yep.
Because when you look at even 3D printer technology, when it started out,
Oh, yeah.
everything was like ABS, and
Yep.
there
PLA
was
was a huge leap in
yeah.
just
So
usability.
and then that really changed it, right? So
And
you
it's
get PLA,
biodegradable,
and now
so
it's yep.
printing ABS, you better have some good ventilation because
I
you don't want to be sitting in the room with
I
that.
think
Mhm.
what's really going to change resin printing is eventually somebody's going to figure out a couple of things. I think they're going to figure out how to make it so it's not so wasteful, or to be able to
Well, that's the
recycle.
funny thing is you can reuse the resin.
Right, or but right now to reuse it, you have to like siphon it off,
Yeah,
put it
yeah,
back in
yeah.
a bottle,
Mhm.
do all that nonsense,
They need to make the resin and there's some people that are doing like resin cartridges.
Yep.
So that'll like actually put it back in the
And-
cartridge
And
take it out
that's
of the
what I'm
cartridge.
getting at. They got to
Yeah.
get it to a point where it's very easy to use it, and then maybe I have to worry about a print and something dripping off the
Yeah.
print, but I don't have to worry about having to take
The
a
management.
vat full of
Oh, yeah. And hope you
caustic
don't, like, trip.
chemicals, and then yeah, exactly, and not make sure that it's
'Cause I'm
burning
sure that
off my
stuff
arm or
stains
something,
and stuff,
right?
too. You don't want to drop it on
Exactly.
your carpet.
But when they get all that figured out and they get it in a more non-toxic way, I think that's definitely
Yeah, I think in the
go.
commercial space with the SLA stuff, there's like you get these big like jug-looking cartridges or whatever, and you just drop it in there, and you can put multiple colors and all crazy stuff in there. And then
I
you
will
can kind of print out whatever you want.
And things
And
have moved really fast. Like when I worked at
Oh yeah, they're
a
crazy
company
fast.
in Madison, I think it was like 5 years ago. They had a Stratasys, like a probably it was either a $15,000 or $30,000 machine,
Oh yeah,
and it was old. I mean, it was like 10 plus years old, and my like $300 printer printed better than it.
yeah, and that's the thing that the accuracy, like some of the cheaper ones now, they're using like LCDs, which is the cool thing with that. Like the older ones use like lasers and mirrors
Yeah,
and stuff,
for
which was like
resin.
unreliable. Like once that breaks, the thing's like useless. You got a
Yep.
$30,000
Yep.
paperweight because getting it fixed would be probably difficult. But yeah, the LCD ones are cool because they can do an entire layer in one shot. So I mean, they're doing like what was it? There was some print that I know takes me like 8 or 9 hours to do on like FDM, and they were doing it in like an hour or two. It's like just giant gap in speed is like, well, especially for commercial purposes, to be able to whip out a prototype in an hour instead of like
yep,
half a day.
and a solid prototype.
Yeah,
too.
well, that's just it. I mean, all you got to do is like rinse it off a bit, throw it in a UV, and at the corporate or the commercial level, you're gonna have a big old UV light, thing and everything. You
Yep.
don't need to worry if the sun's out or not. And I think that's the other thing is like trying to bake or put the curing into the process as well. Like,
Yep.
can you somehow have like some sort of vacuum system or something to
Well, that's
dry
They
it
why
have
off?
I said
curing
once they
stations.
get that shored up, it's
For
just
some
going to
of
really
them.
change it.
Like, so you never even have to touch it until it's cured.
Yeah,
Essentially,
they have curing stations for the Form Labs, the really expensive guys. They have one. The Prusa, their SLA, I think has a curing station, and I think it's you take it off and move it to the other.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking. Like, if it's all in one though, like that's
gonna be really hard to do because you got to protect that resin that's in the vat. Otherwise, you're gonna cure all that.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that's like you got to have that drain system so you can get the resin out, and then. But yeah, it will be hard because the resin is kind of like it's not super liquidy. It's kind of oily, so
And
it'd be hard to
and
really
yeah,
get it out.
yeah, to drain it out if you have anything left in there and you cure it. Now your
It's gonna
vat's
create this
kind of
plate.
yeah.
I definitely agree. I think Creality is the gateway drug
Yes.
to 3D printing. That is.
Well, that's the big thing, and Creality is a bit unique, I think, when it comes to like a lot of the Chinese manufacturers. I mean, I think from the quality perspective, they put more effort in, I think, than some of these places.
I think they put the right amount of effort in.
They keep the price at
where
they're putting in the little they're putting in enough.
I see, and the video on the race cube was a perfect example of this, right?
And that's a really good
So,
sign too.
so we put together, and the video is out there. You can watch it if you haven't. But we bought a $100 3D printer, which was basically like an ANET A8 or a Prusa i3 clone.
But yeah.
But basically, this was a printer that we got for $100. They were obviously clearancing it out. But the remarkable thing is that I could still go to like AliExpress and a couple other places. They were charging $300 to $500 for this printer, and it was garbage. I mean, it was just ultimately garbage. We put it together. I eventually, harvested all the parts and turned it into a C201 printer. But yeah, it was absolutely awful.
Yeah, the hot end was like interesting. The kind of like
It
the
was not a
extruder.
hot end. It was literally just a screw. That's
Yeah,
all it
it
was
was
there.
like a nozzle that was like screwed in right directly into the side of like, if you think of the Ender 3 like extruder where the filament goes in, like it was like screwed directly into a metal one of those. So like the extruder arm was the heat sink for the nozzle or the hot heat block. Yeah, but it was that was quite the interesting printer. It was all like acrylic frame and stuff like that, which was pretty common. I mean, the A-nets and stuff. I mean, it was all acrylic, and I think some of them still are.
Yep.
So, but I think somehow they decided that it was worth using metal after a while. So Creality was one of the earlier ones. I think they really started doing the full
acrylic
metal.
looks nice. It just
not structural.
It's not sound.
Because especially after a while, like once it rocks back and forth enough, it starts to widen gaps, and the screws start to like eat through the acrylic. So it definitely, and the bearings on that thing were just awful. They were noisy and terrible. So it
was definitely not a good printer. So everybody that's watching, I just wanted to say thank you guys for showing up tonight for our very first tech talk, and it's really just this is really a stream to kind of answer questions for you. We are really here to help you with your maker projects, and we've got there's a form that you can fill out, and you can fill it out even when we're not streaming. And we also have a Discord channel, and it really is like an online makerspace. So you've got the ability to talk to us, the three of us, and so many other makers that are absolutely brilliant. We've got STEM teachers out there. We've got mechanical engineers, all sorts of people, and we're all just helping each other. So the idea behind this broadcast is to kind of have a live aspect to it. So that way, if people have questions, they're really getting a little bit more information, then that's what we're really talking about, and that's really what we were trying to do here tonight. So I know we talked a little bit about one of the projects here. Do you want to grab the one of the 301s over there, and we can kind of talk about that real quick?
How heavy is yours?
Mine's probably less movable than yours.
Yeah, my only concern is my power supply.
While he's getting that, can I show something quick?
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Jesse.
This was my wife's project that she put. She came downstairs to show. So it's a laser cut project.
You can grab mine if you want. It's just
basically we still have the masking on this stuff. We'll remove this. It'll be an all black box. It's got some RGB lights in it. You turn it on, and it displays this quote. It's a gift for her mom. And basically, how we did that was we put some mask on the back. It's this weird matte acrylic, and we cut the mask, pulled it off, spray painted the back, and then so the light only comes through where the mask didn't get spray painted. So it's kind of neat. It's just a really interesting material. It's from Tap Plastics. It's some weird matte black.
That's where you bought it.
So.
Yep. Is it so like do you just etch it out or?
So for our first test here, what we did was we put tape all over the back, and then we used the laser to cut all the art out, and then we pulled the tape off, and then spray paint. We pulled the tape off where we wanted a light mask, and then we spray painted black, and then we pulled the rest of the tape off. Like all the tape was still in all the letters and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Because we want the paint to go, or the light to only go through certain areas. Yeah. Next time we might try just spray painting the whole back and using the laser to raster away, and see how well that does. Because it was a lot of work to weed all this stuff out.
Yeah, because that might work. Because if you kind of burn through the paint layer, then it should show through.
Yeah. So I have a Chinese 50-watt laser, and it's like a 12 by 24 bed on there, and I do a lot of projects on that. So
very cool. All right, so we're going to show you something that video for this is probably going to start, I would say, maybe in the next month or two.
Yeah,
probably in that time frame. This has been a prototype printer that we've been working on here for some time. Matter of fact, we started this probably, I want to say back in like April or May of last year. Yeah, you probably have to back that camera up a little bit here. So what we've got here is, so if you're familiar with the channel, you know that we have a C201 printer that we put together, and that was basically a way to make a Prusa i3 type clone. But it walks you step by step through the process of building your own 3D printer, mostly for the educational aspect. You can certainly get a printer out of it, but it's educational in the sense that you learn how a 3D printer works from every single part of it, and we show you how to assemble it. So it's a really great instructional video. We're going to be taking that a step further here in 2020. What we're going to be doing is, this is what we refer to on and off all the time as the 301. This is a 300 millimeter bed. It's like 314, I think, but
Yeah.
basically a 300 by 300 millimeter bed. It is a Core XY printer, and it also has a lot of really cool features like the SKR in it, touchscreen display. We are going to be doing a video on this in a series the same way that we did for the C201. So it's one of those things that you know, if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe, check it out. If you're interested in building your own Core XY, we're going to be walking through it the exact same way. So every single nut and bolt. So at the end, if you follow along, there will also be a full bill of material and parts list. A lot of this printer is metal. Nick here has a slightly different design. And I like a lot of parts of his design. So this is not the total final printer. But what it is one of the prototypes. Nick's got another prototype that's over here that we've been comparing tonight and looking at what we're keeping for the final printer. But the nice thing is that we're going to have a video here very soon, a video series that's going to cover the assembly of this printer and creating your own. So if it's something you're interested in, make sure you subscribe to the channel and check it out. I'm very excited about doing this printer because the C201 was a tremendously successful series. Matter of fact, Hackster.io, Hackaday, they all published that printer and gave us a blog article about it. So we've had a lot of people interested in it. And I think this is really going to be our next step, which is going to be this Core XY printer. And we can talk about some of the cool features real quick of it. Compared to other Core XYs like the Hypercube, you may be able to notice here, it's a little hard to see, but the front is open. The Hypercube really makes a cube, and it's a Core XY printer. This one has a very open front to it. So easier to get your 3D prints off and easier to access it. So that's a really cool feature. Some of the other features that we've got in here is that it does have solid metal construction. The other piece that we've got in here is linear rails. So all of it is very high tolerances. So if you've seen videos on, what do they call it, the second, or basically like supposed to be like your second 3D printer or your last 3D printer. This is not similar to that because I'd actually been working on this before they come out with that printer, but very similar in that type of design in the sense that this sort of printer and this one is as hodgepodgey as it looks right now, is actually a tremendously reliable printer. I get absolutely fabulous prints off this every single time. They go down every single time. I don't have to re-level my printer. I think I level it once a month, if that, and that's only to run the auto level sequence. But other than that, it stays very level. So we're going to be having this video out, but I wanted to share that because that's one of the things people ask about a lot, and in the Discord, and it is a printer that we're getting very, very close to getting wrapped up and start that video production. So.
Yeah, and just like the 201, I mean, I think the main advantage is when you build it yourself, you kind of know the in and outs. You can add to it, so you can make it, you know, a little better. So maybe you want to add something we didn't, or you want to use a different hot end, or what have you. So the idea is that you can kind of dive into that realm of building your own, and then that way you can customize it however you want. And he's right now got a dual extruder on here, essentially the Chimera.
Yeah, I have the Chimera on there, but I think what I'm going to probably do for my version, and that's one of the cool things about doing these printers and learning about these printers from how they're built from the ground up, is that I'm planning on putting a mixing extruder on mine, so that way I can do, let's say, 2 or 3 different colors. Because I while the Chimera worked, I wasn't very happy with the Chimera in the sense that that second nozzle really does get in the way of a lot of different things.
I think the mixing with the single nozzle is really good. It means that you got to purge and stuff if you want to switch colors, which you kind of have to do that with the dual nozzle anyways, otherwise you get oozing. So I think the dual nozzle is cool, but it does take a lot of work to get them level. And then you'd print one color, you'd come back to the next one and grab the print and throw it off the bed. So
I have a Chimera for sale if anybody wants one.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad hot end. It's just it does take a little bit of
it's just
tweaking.
I think it was great, but I think it's got to have something else for the long term. So
and we've been looking at some other hot ends and stuff too. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff happening. I think E3D just came out with a new one, and they've got like all kinds of crazy stuff. They got water cooled hot ends, which I think is neat. But yeah, I think the Core XY design definitely has a lot of advantages. I mean, your bed's not moving around, so your weight on the carriage is so much lower.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I like about this is that because the bed does not move except down.
Yeah.
And Jesse, we did this when you were over. We were working in your printer. I had this thing cranked up to like 200% or 300%. You could just turn the feed knob on this thing and just keep turning it up more and more.
Yeah.
And it literally prints it. The only thing that restricts this thing speed-wise is how fast it can melt that filament. That is the only limitation.
And that's kind of the big thing with FDM.
Speed on this printer.
The FDM printing, I mean, that's its biggest issue with speed is really, being able to extrude reliably at the speed is actually more of the problem. And like people show printers flying around all the time mechanically. It's like, well, that's fine and all, but
how do you get the quality?
Your extruder has to be able to push that filament at that speed through that nozzle, and that nozzle has to be able to melt it, at that. And a lot of times what you do is crank up the heat a little bit, but then you run into some oozing issues and stuff. So I mean, there's a lot of things where your speed actually ends up probably being more about your
helps
nozzle.
With that. I mean, I've got a Volcano on another one, but same thing. You still got more.
And you can melt faster, but you get more oozing.
Do you guys remember that article a few years ago about I think it was MIT? They were coming up with they were working on a crazy fast printer idea, and it was like threaded filament, and it was using lasers to melt the filament.
Yeah, that was pretty nutty. Yeah, and I think it's kind of cool, and that's like I was talking, speaking of nozzles, this one's got brass on it, and brass is really good for PLA and stuff. It's got good thermal conductivity, so it's able to transfer its heat to the filament quickly is the idea, and they heat up a little quicker, that kind of thing. So a lot of the suggestions you get, like if you want to do like carbon fiber or glow in the dark or any of these other abrasive filaments, is go get a hardened steel nozzle. Well, it's really good, it doesn't wear out, but the problem is the thermal conductivity of those nozzles is horrendous.
See, honestly, that's your approach to it. My approach.
Well, that's not. Well, you just replace nozzles, which is cool.
I just replace nozzles. I
don't want my print to be halfway over.
20 cents.
Well, from what I understand, the carbon fiber is like pretty nutty. Like it'll tear a brass nozzle up real quick. But anyways, so the problem with that then is you end up with stringing. So you have to run your nozzle higher if you want to like print at any reasonable speed, and you just get stringing. Like I've had so many problems trying to tune it with that nozzle. So my next thing is probably going to be like a tungsten nozzle. They're the ones I've seen are like tungsten and copper. They got like alloys and stuff in them.
You're not going straight to ruby?
No, and that's the funny part is the thermal conductivity. Yeah, the thermal on the ruby isn't really all that much better than the steel. So I mean, the tungsten's actually got better thermal conductivity than the brass. So theoretically, it'll work, as good, if not a little bit better, for quick printing in particular. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing is like there was a point where I my steel nozzle or something got clogged, and I had to switch back to a brass one for a while. And then I like realized like how much trouble it was to use the steel one because I've been using it for a while, and I just kind of got it figured out and sorted out. And then I went to the brass and was like, wow, this printing stuff's easy. Like, it was so much easier to use the brass, but when I want to use those more abrasive filaments, I'm worried.
Well,
it's gonna punch
tungsten is supposed to be the
I think that's
holy
really
grail
cool.
of nozzle.
To me, it seems like it's got all the properties you want in the nozzle for sure. It's got good hardness, and it's it got the good thermal conductivity. So they're a bit pricey, but they're cheaper than the Ruby nozzles.
Well, with a little
sure.
luck, we might get one delivered to us. So.
Yeah. So if anybody watching, knows anybody.
Well, no,
I mean
we've got that company that's supposed to be sending us a hot end. So.
So someone was gonna send us a hot end to review, and it looks pretty cool. Like so we'll probably have a video on that, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking that's where I'm going. But I think nozzles have a lot of impact. And, the steel ones, I'm kind of over that, so I might invest in the.
Cool. So let's see if we had any more questions before we wrap up here tonight. So, which hot end upgrade suggestions for the Ender 3? Honestly, Micro Swiss. That's the one that I've got, and it's a drop-in replacement. It took me, I think, 20 minutes to get that nozzle installed.
You can keep all the same carriage stuff and everything.
Yeah, you keep everything in it, and all metal, and it's worked great. I've had no problems with it.
Yeah, and I think there's someone out there now, and maybe K3D has one, but it seems like someone has like an all-metal throat kit now for the Ender 3 hot end as well.
A little more work, though. You kind of have to know what you're doing.
You have to kind of you got to put the nozzle and stuff in. So did the Micro Swiss come pre-assembled then?
The throat portion of it was, but the rest of it you had to screw together. But that wasn't.
Which is not a problem. So like the E3D V6 is another one that's pretty popular. Mostly, and the nice thing about that one is you can get a lot of parts. But I think some of the throats and nozzles and stuff for the V6 work on the Micro Swiss as well.
Yep.
So I run like an E3D V6 clone, as it were, and I bought a Micro Swiss makes a throat for it that's actually hardened as well. So that's what I use for that. Again, abrasion protection, and it's got a nice smooth coating on it as well. That's supposed to help with PLA. A lot of people with the E3D V6s, they have problems with PLA sticking in the throat because they're still running the same really long retraction. If you're running like 6 millimeters of retraction, you might want to rethink that.
Well, it all depends on it depends on what's necessary for you to build, right?
Yeah.
On a direct drive, 6 millimeters is crazy.
Is nutty, yeah.
But on like this Bowden on this one, when I would, and I'm going to change this to direct drive, but for this Bowden,
it's really long.
This is 6.5, so that's barely making it.
Yeah,
so.
You have to be careful, because essentially if that molten PLA gets in there and then grips to that throat, it can get stuck. But the throat, the E3D ones and like the official ones are usually pretty good. It's when people buy the clones, the throats aren't as clean.
And this official build will be direct drive. We tried the Bowden, but this will be a direct drive build.
I've done direct drive on mine, but I didn't do the design on the carriage needs to be redone. So that's probably on the.
And the way this kind of worked, which I thought was really the best way to build this printer, the way this worked is Nick and I had the idea of putting together this printer. We wanted to build one ourselves, design it ourselves. So all the parts that you see on it, we've designed. And the approach we took is I built an initial prototype, gave Nick all the information on how I built mine. He went and built his prototype, and now we're more or less combining the two into the final version that we'll do videos on.
Yeah, and a lot of it was just, I was experimenting with stuff, and
well, that's what the whole thing was.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And so that's the thing, like they're the same basic design, but then how things get connected, and I just went with a single nozzle up front, and then he had the dual, so it was just trying out different things. So it was a good way for us to kind of experiment with different approaches, and then now we can come together and kind of take the best of both and just kind of work off of it and say, okay, what makes the most polished thing that we can deliver. And everybody.
I gotta say, I like a lot of we can't show you Nick's only because it's in a lot more pieces than this one is.
Yeah,
this one works and is in one solid piece.
Not quite as polished yet.
But he's got a lot of really nice parts on his that I like. Other areas that I don't, even areas on mine that I don't like that we discussed today.
Yeah, we're talking about changing both
making
of them,
some changes. So, but we think we've got a final version. It's going to be really good. I think that's it. The only other project that I've got, I'm not going to drag it out here. The Scara arm, got it printing. Needs to be calibrated. That's what I'm kind of working on. Other than calibration, Scara arm video should be just a matter of getting that printed and wrapped up. And then the other video we talked about already was going to be the Creality 1.4 board. I'm going to upgrade that into this printer here.
SKR.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
You said Creality.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Big Tree Tech SKR board. We talked about a lot of Creality.
Yeah.
We're going to upgrade that and put that in this printer here. So we'll have a video on that as well. So I think that's it. Jesse, any final words or projects you've been working on?
I don't think so. Just kind of still getting my printer up and going. So, and yeah,
that was a good project. And if you missed that, rewind the video. We were talking about it, and you'll have to remind everyone because I forget the name of that printer every single time. What printer was that we upgraded?
It was a Monoprice Maker Architect, the first one that they did.
Yeah, and I know like a lot of their printers are rebadged stuff that they got from elsewhere. So that you'll look at their printer and you're like, isn't that a and they're like, oh yeah, they just kind of rebadge it. So
Yep. I think they're similar to like Wanhao ones. I think I don't know.
Yeah, and there's one Ultimaker. The other one I was thinking of, they make Kira. They make like a bunch of printers, and I mean, from what I understand, those are pretty like set it up and use it kind of printers, and they got enclosures and stuff as well. So if you're really looking for like set it up and use it, then that's probably a brand you can look at. And they're not super expensive, but I think even the entry level stuff is near 1,000, if not a little more. So
someone in the comments was talking that I think their school bought an Ultimaker for like $6,000, and they suggested that they probably should have bought several printers for that price.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it, especially at a school setting. I'd almost encourage buying the cheaper ones and having a little bit of trouble with them. I think you get more educational value out of it in that way. I guess it depends on what you're trying to teach.
It depends on the age group too, right? Because if you got a bunch of middle schoolers, they're not even going to remember tomorrow what you adjusted in the Cura setting.
So then the teacher,
on the printer, right?
the teacher has to kind of.
So you're just making it hard on the STEM teacher.
But I think definitely for high school, it's it wouldn't be such a terrible thing to maybe have a couple printers that they can kind of fiddle with.
Middle schoolers aren't very capable. They are, but I mean, an entire classroom full of them trying to remember printer settings might be a bit.
And you got a whole mixed bag too. I mean, you've got you see people like this with computers and things like that too. I mean, everyone's got their own interests. There's everyone. Everything. This thing, is great for them. Some people like books. I can't stand books, but I read stuff all the time. I read it on the computer. So I'm online reading stuff. I'm a fact over fiction kind of guy. So I'm into nonfiction.
Yep. So Jesse, next maker project you're working on?
I don't know if I have any on the horizon. I got to finish my lights. So yeah, I gotta do a little bit more wiring, and then I gotta play with the ESP so I can Wi-Fi control it. And then I don't think I have any slated, but I'll find something.
Very cool. Nick, next maker project?
Probably just finishing up my 301. I just moved, so I'm trying to I got a lot of projects around the house.
Yeah, he's not going to be working on 3D printers. He just bought a house.
Yeah, so I've got stuff to do there, but I'm getting kind of hopefully towards the end of that stuff. So yeah, I'm going to try and get my 301 kind of sorted out and situated.
And I think my next one is to finish up the tentacle project here and finish up that video. That's probably going to be one of the next things. I'm so close to having it done. The battery is over there charging, as a matter of fact, for it. So very close to getting that one wrapped up. So I think that's it. If nobody has any other questions, I think we're going to call it a stream tonight. If you have been watching and enjoyed this, please join our Discord channel. Links are in the description below. You can hang out with us all the time and talk more or less any time of the day. There's always somebody in there, night or day, usually. So it's a great place to talk and meet with other makers. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please feel free to subscribe and see other great videos like this. The next one of these we're probably going to do in 2 weeks. So we're starting out with an every 2 weeks video cycle on this. just because we want to see how it goes, see how the reception is. We had a great reception tonight. I think we had 15 or more guys, or guys,
Guys or girls?
15 or more guys or girls, people, in the chat here tonight. So it was really, really great. So thank you again all for watching tonight, and we will see you guys next time.